Hi, and welcome back to the series of videos about formatting long documents in a word processor. In this particular video, we are going to build on our previous videos where we started talking about forms of formatting. We did a short video on font formatting, and in the video before this one, we did a little introduction to some of the basics of paragraph formatting. In this video, I want to talk about bullets and numbering. So these are special types of paragraph formatting where each paragraph is indented and numerified in a way, or numericized, I'm not quite sure what the right verb is there, but are allocated a symbol, a dot, or a number in order to create a list in a paragraph form. And most of you probably used bullets or numbering before, and you'll be familiar with this feature in your word processor. But just to kind of really go into the nitty-gritty details of how bullets or numbering work, because they are also very useful when you start to define bulleted or numbered list styles, and to make sure that the appearance of your lists or bullets are consistent and looking neat and tidy. All right, so we're still on this home ribbon as we were before. You can see it on the top left there as I cursor over it, little emphasis. And we are still in this section here in the middle of the screen, just to the left, called paragraph. And you can see that there are three buttons: bullets, numbering, and then numbered lists. So numbering that goes in multiple indentations. You can see here in the past, I have created some bespoke lists for my, I think it was for my PhD thesis, actually, this chapter situation. Anyway, we're going to be looking at these in the video today. And the first thing I'm going to do is let's have a look at bulleting, because it's a little bit easier than numbering. This button here will automatically, when you have selected a particular paragraph, bullet that paragraph. What does that effectively mean? It means that you get a first line indent that goes in a little bit left from the main left margin of the document. I'm looking at the ruler at the top now. You can see the little mouse over hints that are coming through. That the hanging indent is then even further in from the left-hand margin. And that on that first line, there is, if you select it, it turns gray, a special character or a symbol that acts as the bullet anchor in that paragraph. Now, normally, you wouldn't have long bullets like this. You would have short items in a bulleted list. So I'm going to make each of the first sentences in this nonsense lorem ipsum paragraph, each a separate bullet item. Now, when I get to the last item in my list, if I want this now to be a normal paragraph again, I have a couple of options. I can either click on the bullet button at the top and it will remove it, or I can just backspace until I take that left indent back to line up with the margin of the page. Now let's have a look at these 5 bullets we have created. Each of them is treated as a separate paragraph, but they're a special type of paragraph because they have something called a level attached to them as well. And if we look at the details of our paragraph formatting, it will show you that we've already done all sorts of things. It's got like a body text level. You can adjust these as well. We'll talk about those later when we talk about styles. But it's already sorted out all sorts of things like the indentation and the hanging indentation, as well as the line spacing. There's a little tick box here that is particularly useful, which says don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. And what that does is it means that if I have default paragraph spacing here that is quite generous, it's not going to apply those to my bulleted formats. Now think about what that means. If I take that off, can you see how this could really spread out can really spread my bullets out. So in this case, I'm saying apply that paragraph spacing. In fact, it's become a little bit inconsistent. Apply that paragraph spacing, even though it's bulleted list. But if I decide, okay, that's very nice for these large, dense clips of text that I have here, but I don't want to have my bullets spread out so much, then I'll go, okay, select those bulleted paragraphs, don't add space between paragraphs, same style, and thank you very much. Now you see, this is a different style to that one. This one is not bulleted, and that one is bulleted. It keeps wanting to correct all the Latin. Can you see how it's throwing ideas at me about the incorrect spelling? Thank you, Microsoft. Also, what we can do with bullets, and this will be the same for numbers as well, is in addition to all the usual sorts of paragraph things we can do, we can change the indents, we can change the spacing before and after. We'll look at line breaks a little bit more when we look at paragraph styles. In addition to all of those usual paragraph formatting features that we looked at in the last video, there are some bullet-specific ones. So if you click on that drop-down box, you can see that you can change the list level of your bullets. You can see there are 9 list levels, all the way from the leftmost bullet, which is level 1, all the way down to level 9. And this is where you can nest bullet levels. I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. But effectively, what this is saying is make these bullets at these different levels have different appearances. One is a circle, one is an empty circle, one is a square, so that you can distinguish between levels of nesting. So you could have bullets and sub-bullets, effectively, 9 levels down. Rarely would you ever use that depth. At best, normally, I would recommend for an academic text, you should never have more than 2 levels of nested bullets. Perhaps in some extremely exceptional circumstances 3, because as soon as you start getting deeper than that, the readability is affected to the point where it's difficult to see what's happening on the page. But you can see here as well that I can choose the symbol used as the bullet anchor, which is just another character. It's just another Unicode character from a font file, and I can choose both which character I want to use and the font file it is drawn from. So you can see here that I can have a square. I can also have the normal round filled in black circle or an empty circle, depending on the preference. I could start to get a little bit crazy here. Perhaps I want to think of this like a checklist, and I make my bullets into a symbol from the symbol font, which is a tick. And if you're wanting to get really, really fancy, you can define a new bullet. And when you do this, you can choose the symbol you want from the character selector. This is the same dialogue you get when you try to insert a special symbol. Those of you who've had to do other languages other than English that uses things like accents and breves and umlauts and things like that will probably be a bit more familiar with this. You can pick from a particular font file, the most common ones being Wingdings, or Webdings, or Symbol. But you can pick from any of the normal fonts you're familiar with. You can pick from Arial or Times New Roman. But the funky little pictures that are the most common that people use are normally from Wingdings or Symbol. And if you wanted to get really esoteric, please don't do this in your thesis. You could have a yin-yang as your bullet symbol. Looks terrible, but you know, options. People like options. I am going to rather choose something that looks a little bit more elegant. How about a 4-pointed star? I think that'll look quite nice. Well, for a certain type of document, perhaps if I was doing an NGO report, that is not a bad little symbol to use. For an academic text that is meant to be serious and scholarly, for better or worse, perhaps you don't aesthetically like this, but we tend to keep things relatively conservative. So I would recommend for your academic text, do not get fancy. Stick with either a filled in black bullet or a empty circle bullet. To indent bullets and go into those sub-nested levels that we could see in the dialogue, you simply go to the beginning of the bullet paragraph and you press tab. And you can see that with every tab, the bullet character changes. In this case, I happen to have defined level 1 and level 2 to look the same. Can you see? If I go back to my original choice, which is the black bullet, and then I go back here, I can say, all right, this is how it's defined at the moment, which I could change. But with each indent, I go to a deeper nest level. And of course, I take another shift across the page from left to right. So that is effectively the best way to do bullets. We always keep them left aligned rather than justified. You'll see that justifying a bullet list doesn't do very much because the alignment is in fact built into the bullet definition. There you go, rather than the paragraph definition. And as you can see, bullets do not allow you to justify. You could do it as centered if you want. A very strange looking thing. The whole point of a bulleted list is to have the special bullet anchor symbol aligned on the left-hand side. So keep them left aligned, even if your main dominant text is justified. I recommend not spreading them out too far apart, so keep your line spacing relatively moderate, neither bunched together nor spread out all over the show. Keep your symbols looking relatively conservative and don't get too fancy. All right, that's bullets. Numbers effectively work on the same principle. I could take the same set of paragraphs and I can say, please number them. And in this case, I have used a normal form of numeric followed by a full stop. But I can, like bullets, change that. So here I have it followed by a bracket. Apologies. You see now I've turned it back into a normal paragraph there by removing numbers. But you can also have Roman numerals. You can also have letters of the alphabet capitalized or lowercase. Another useful thing about numbering, unlike bullets, is that they can be applied to headings, and we will look at headings a little bit more when we start to look at paragraph styles. But you can place normal text or paragraphs in between the items of a numbered list. So this is very useful when you are having numbered headings or wanting to elaborate on a particular item in a numbered list. What is also useful is that even if there was a lot of text, your word processor will remember that these items are in a list together. And you can see that when you select the anchoring number, it will highlight those that belong together. But if you wanted to say, okay, well, that was 1 and that was 2, and we wrote some more rather interesting things about item B in the list. We go, actually, this is a different list. I'm starting a new story here. You can right-click on your number. You can set the numbering value, or you can restart at A. And what you'll see here is that now it's severed it off and created a new list. A and B and C there belong together, A and B there belong together. And you can independently set the numbering styles and they will not affect each other. So effectively you've cut your list after the second item and you started a new one. Like bullets, you can nest numbered lists. And in fact, over here, you can start to see that your lists, again, have 9 levels, and each level can have its own numbering format defined. So you can see, change the level here. My first level is a number with a bracket followed. The second is a letter with a full stop. Then lowercase Roman numerals with a full stop. Then we're back to numbers, but with a full stop. Again, just like with bullets, I really strongly recommend that you don't go deeper than, at most, with numbered lists, level 4, preferably up to level 3, no deeper. But what's also quite nice is that you can, for a numbered list, define a particular number style that you want, which is how I've done things here like lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3. So for example here, define new number format, just like define new bullet format. Let's say my numbered list is in fact a set of headings that correspond to my chapters, or in the past I've used this when setting out module guides for my courses that I teach. And at the first level is a number corresponding to the lecture number or the chapter number. You don't have to only put, you can see in this particular, can't really zoom in very well, but you can see in this particular number format that there's the bracket, which is part of the aesthetics of the number format, and then there's the actual number, which is what will iterate and will increase with each item in the list. So that is a field. We'll do a session on fields. That is a field, which means it is a variable or a placeholder that the word processor remembers that needs to increment upwards and needs to change. So the value is calculated in the back and the final output is put in the placeholder position. But the bracket is a consistent form of formatting. Now, let's say you don't want to have a character of a bracket after the number field. You can then put characters also before it. So you can say chapter 1, and because 1 is the field, you can see it highlighted in gray. That is what is going to increment with each new item in the list, but everyone is going to have the word chapter before it. Or I could say list item number, could use a hashtag. Well, look at that. So you can start to get quite clever with some of your numbering formats, putting characters before the field that bumps up 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, as well as after, even though the conventional ones that your word processor offers you will normally put a bracket or a full stop after the incrementing number. We'll look at these more again when we start to use headings in our styles video. But for now, I hope that this gives you a little taste about what you can do to create enumerated lists or bulleted lists in your text in a way that is a useful way for presenting lists in a readable manner rather than run-on paragraph lists separated by semicolons, etc. Don't overuse lists in an academic dissertation or essay, but they can be a more readable format rather than a run-on paragraph with a lot of commas. So use your discretion, but don't rely on them too much. Don't rely on them overly heavily. In reports, they're more appropriate. For academic texts, we normally rely on the paragraph format more, and we use lists sparingly. Right, in the next video, we are going to enter the exciting and wonderful world of paragraph tabs. I'll see you there.